It is my pleasure to welcome you all to the University of Chicago and to International House. My name is Random House Berkley, and I'm a Metcalf intern for the Global Voices program here in the International House. Through a generous gift from John D. Rockefeller Jr. in 1932, the International House was founded as a co-educational residence hall and a program center for both students from around the world as well as the citizens of Chicago here. Over the course of this 2017-2018 academic year, we've been celebrating the 85th anniversary of International House through events which advance our mission for fostering cross-cultural understanding through cultural exchange. For tonight's talk, we are honored to host memoirist, podcast personality, and activist Jasmin Singer, a person who, through her intersectional advocacy for LGBTQ+ and animal rights, furthers our mission to facilitate cross-cultural understanding and opportunities for discourse on world affairs. Tonight's event was made possible by the generous support of the University of Chicago Student Government, the University of Chicago Animal Welfare Society, and catered food from the Chicago Diner, which has been meat-free since 1983. On behalf of the Global Voices program and International House, we hope that you enjoy tonight's program and will join us again for upcoming events. For information on those upcoming events, please sign up for our list hosts at the front literature table or visit our website, ihouse.uchicago.edu. We are thrilled to have you all here tonight. Now, please join me in welcoming Bruno, events planner for the University of Chicago Animal Welfare Society.
I'm not a TA anymore. So hey everyone, I'm Bruno. I'm a second year here at the school, and I'm an events planner of UChicago, which you've probably seen some people from UChicago here. I hope you're okay that I read this on my phone because it's midterm week. I can only memorize so many things. I'm really happy to be the one introducing Jasmin because this talk resonates so much to me. I'm a bisexual man, and I've worked with animal activism for 3 years now. I've been involved with UChicago since I came here. I'm involved with also an LGBTQ organization, and it's just a really important theme that I've wanted to talk for a while. I voted for Jasmin when we were deciding who we were bringing this year. I voted for Chicago Diner, which is a restaurant in Boys Town, for those who don't know, that really embraces the community. They employ many LGBTQ people. They are always advertising events from the community, and all of this, I'm just really happy to have you all here to have this with us. When we started communicating with Jasmin, and I heard her talk about the book, it made it even better. I don't know how many of you researched about the book, but the message of body positivity, it's like someone got everything that is important to me and put it in one talk. And it's a really cool event. As you know, she's the writer of Always Too Much and Never Enough, and she's going to talk about her book and her activism in general. I hope you stick around later. There will be books to be bought and signed. We'll have a Q&A right after the talk, and you're probably tired of listening to me talking, so how about you join me in applause to our speaker tonight, Jasmin Singer.
Well, it's in the last day. But it's very exciting to have the food again, yet again. So I do want to tell you briefly just a little bit more about my work, and then I'll circle back around to talk about some of my feelings regarding the overlaps between LGBTQ and animal rights, and then I would love to talk about what I see as the value of personal narrative as a means to creating social change. So I am the co-founder and co-host of Our Hen House, which is a media nonprofit that produces podcasts. So the Our Hen House podcast is what we're most known for, and today marked our 431st episode. So we've never missed a week. So thank you for that. Yeah, I appreciate it. And we have literally interviewed thousands and thousands of activists working to change the world for animals since we started in 2010. And I co-founded it with Marianne Sullivan, who is an animal law professor, and she also hosts the Animal Law podcast, which Our Hen House also produces. I have a lot of fun with it, and one of the best parts for me about it is being able to bring people onto the show who are coming at their animal rights activism from an intersectional standpoint. So I hope you listen. You have to clear your schedules because there's 9 years to get caught up on. I'm also the senior editor for VegNews magazine. you might have been on the other end of me throwing it in your face a few minutes ago, but please take them because we shipped them out here. I'd be so excited if you took a stack and left them in a place where you think people would be excited to grab a free magazine. VegNews is the leading vegan media organization company in the world, and we are in our 18th year. And one thing that made me move from New York City to LA in order to take the job heading up editorial at VegNews is not the beautiful food that you see on the front cover, but the fact that we host a politics of series in every issue, where we get to basically take a food magazine, which is also a lifestyle magazine, and make it not only appealing to the people at Walmart who buy it, but also allow people the opportunity to think more deeply about issues that I think are very important right now, such as the politics of school food and the politics of the prison industrial complex. And right now I'm editing a piece on the downfall of dairy. And it gets into all of the issues about the monstrosity of the dairy industry. So that's my secret love about VegNews, is the fact that we get those harder hitting issues in. And by the way, I always welcome feedback, and I want to know what's relevant to you. I'm extremely accessible. So please email me or whatever, or find me online somehow, just let me know what your thoughts are. Because these interconnections, they're the reason why I work in media. And they're the reasons why I work in vegan media specifically, because I think that coming at social justice from a vegan standpoint is like a hugely empowering thing for so many reasons that I'm going to get into now. I myself came into the animal rights movement by way of the LGBTQ movement, and more specifically the AIDS awareness movement. So I started out working for an AIDS awareness theater company called Night Star many years ago, and I was in New York City, so I would go into like these inner city schools and teach high school students mainly about safer sex and about communication and about AIDS, and just also about like various issues of violence. And at the time, I was a vegetarian. I had stopped eating meat when I was in college because I thought that it was icky, and I would introduce myself as like a vegetarian but not the mean kind. And it was just, I had no information about factory farming. I didn't even think about it. But when I was with Night Star, something shifted. Because I was the type of vegetarian who basically only consumed cheese and eggs and like pizza and omelets, I was really keeping the dairy and egg industry alive, like single-handedly. Anyway, so I met this vegan, as we do, and she showed me this documentary about factory farming, and you know, I started to realize that the issues were very similar within the LGBTQ work that I was doing and within what I was seeing on the screen, which I will also talk about more in a few minutes. And no longer could I consume dairy and eggs with this newfound idea of how the feminist issues were affected by the dairy and egg industries in particular. Because of course the dairy and egg industries are industries that are absolutely reliant on the exploitation of female bodies. And when I realized that, I was like, oh no, I'm gonna go vegan. Anyway, I started to realize that the mindset of the oppressor was very similar, no matter who you were marginalizing or othering or oppressing, right? So that was something that was kind of mind-blowing to me, and it really paved the way for my career. I was 22 at the time, 38 now, so it really paved the way for like this kind of hybrid career, speaking out for animals, but also whenever and however possible, making it an intersectional issue, because it is. There's no sidestepping that fact. So it was around that time that I became a writer, and one of my first published print articles was called Coming Out for Animals. And it was in Satya magazine, which is a now defunct publication, but I highly recommend you look it up because all of the articles are available online, and it was basically like this incredible intersectional but yet very accessible magazine. And I wrote this, and it was a big like teach-in moment for me. And it pointed to those aforementioned commonalities between the mindset of the oppressors, of queer people and of animals alike. So what are they? Insert the blank group, here for my use. I am better than insert the blank group. Oh, and my favorite, I love when this comes up. God, right, or the Bible said that I should be able to bully or, further exploit, insert the blank group. Queer people, or various other types of marginalized community. Anyway, the final line of the article is sliced to death is sliced to death, whether a slaughterhouse worker or a homophobic bully happens to be holding the knife. Which says it all, really. So I came to the animal rights movement by way of this AIDS awareness movement, and it has informed the way I approach my writing, my thinking, my activism, my medium making, and my personal interactions. A few years ago, we at our hen house put together a video which really points to a variety of activists who focus on animal rights activism, but really also came to veganism and animal rights activism by way of various LGBTQ advocacy communities. And I'm going to show this video. It's like 4 minutes long, and then we'll talk about it further. So I'm ready to show the video. Video making people.
It was really liberating to realize that I could incorporate animal rights into my own life mission.
Food absolutely is activism. There are people who will say, oh, it's not, show me the animal you saved. But you know what? By not eating an animal, that's one less that had to be killed.
When you think about being gay and being vegan, I always kind of see the coming out process as very similar. For both of us, it's about being who you are.
Coming out, vegan was
Eating an animal, that's one less that had to be killed.
When you think about being gay and being vegan, I always kind of see the coming out process as very similar. For both of us, it's about being who you are.
Coming out, vegan was harder. When it came to coming out, like my family in particular, as vegan, that was just kind of done in a whisper. Literally a whisper.
I think that it was a lot easier for me first to be vegetarian and go through that struggle and have a lot of people question my decisions and question my lifestyle. And then going out as a lesbian, I knew that my lifestyle was for me and that I had to stay strong.
I watched the film Farm to Fridge, and that's the moment that I went vegan, that I recognized the suffering that's going on with animals in factory farming, and it changed me on a cellular level.
I actually came into the animal rights movement by way of the AIDS awareness movement, and a friend of mine had showed me some footage of factory farming, and I was blown away by what was going on.
I really didn't think of it as a social justice issue until much later. It was an emotional issue.
Are we going to be in the 21st century and live together, share the planet with the animals, with the trees? And for me, when I went vegan, it was about I want to be on a peaceful pie. Eating a murderous pie, it's like, why would you choose to do that once you know? Why?
I was sort of drawn into AIDS activism back in the early 90s with ACT UP. I do think that form of activism, being able to take something that wasn't invisible and make it visible, has completely informed my sense of activism for animals.
We first met, ironically, when I was writing an article.
I cannot believe you're telling this story.
I know, I don't know why I am. Stop me. Stop me. Okay, I'll continue.
I've never known how to stop you.
Oh my god, dessert.
Those are vegan French macarons, and then of course mixed berries, and we have coconut cream.
I actually like to double fist it, so.
I think there's a lot of gay people in the animal rights movement, and personally I think it's because we're just we're a more compassionate group. Most of us have experienced some sort of discrimination or bullying.
What I've begun to realize is that these are beings who cannot advocate for themselves. They don't have our language. They don't have our skills. But I can take their place. I can be their surrogate.
I was writing an article about the connections between gay rights and animal rights. It was 2006 when I wrote it. And I interviewed you for it via email. I'd heard of Marianne Sullivan, and the quote that you gave to me never made it into the article.
That's like the meanest thing, and I'm sure it was brilliant, though we don't really know, do we? Because it was never made it into the article.
Well, and then we actually met in person, again, ironically, at the LGBT Center in Manhattan.
One of the things that I think is most important for anybody who's working in the social justice movement is the importance of allies. And we all know that if a movement is going to succeed, it can't just be coming from the people who are oppressed. They have to lead the way, but they need allies among the people who already have the power. I mean, this happened in every social justice movement that's ever succeeded.
It was very surprising to me to find that people in the LGBT community did not view animal rights the same way I did. And it baffles me that if you're going to fight for equality, why aren't you fighting for equality for everybody?
For, veganism and being able to speak out is a statement, and being out and gay is also a statement. It's about being who you are.
Okay, I think there was another light on before. I'm gonna keep going, but if light can happen, that would be great. So anyway, I did want to show you that and basically use that as a way to inform how my book came out. Always Too Much and Never Enough, which is really a roundabout journey to seeking personal authenticity, which, for me was quite an experience that started when I was growing up in New Jersey in the 80s. In the fluorescent 1980s, as a very, very bullied kid. Bullied in a way that I really hope doesn't happen anymore, but I'm pretty sure it still does. It's just not really talked about because it's not fun to talk about it. But anyway, always kind of coming from this position of being the kid who just didn't fit in, who was following around my very thin and beautiful mother. And it was all weird because food to me was definitely not, put this mic, okay. It was not it was not an item that you would eat for nourishment or for satisfaction. It was something that you would consume in order to change yourself or deprive yourself or kind of just something to get away from the bullies. What I didn't realize then was that I was part of the system that was reliant on my willful ignorance to continue to consume more and more and more. Because of course, food was created in such a way that it was the exact right ratio of fat to sweet to salty and mushy to go down my gullet at exactly the right speed and hit the part of my head that would never be sated. It was literally always too much and never enough. And I was always too much and never enough, taking up too much space in the room, but also not enough, not being able to live up to what society wanted me to be, or what my mother wanted me to be, or what I wanted me to be. But how could I know that? Because I was too busy hiding from my truth by way of the Oreos, which are vegan, or Cheez-Its, which I consumed basically only from 1983 to 1989. That I swear. Anyway, it was all kind of mind-blowing to me that I one day realized that food is actually the most personal political issue there is. And I know that we all live in this world in this time where we have very little control over so much around us. But I find such hope and such strength in knowing that I have choices over what I'm consuming, over how I'm spending my dollars, over what I'm eating, over what I see as food and what I don't. And to me that is very, very tied in with this video. If I was a cow, if I was born a cow, I would not want someone to be deciding for me that my milk was theirs to take. I would not want someone to know that my meat was theirs to eat. It's all kind of the same, isn't it? Like, I'm a lesbian, and I present not really as a lesbian oftentimes, and so people don't think that it's, their business to exploit me in the way that they would if I was like a more butch presenting, or a trans presenting, or like a genderqueer presenting. But no, I am extremely privileged by being a sort of lesbian who can pass. How is that any different than like deciding that an animal is there for my, my consumption? I personally don't think it is. Anyway, the idea of being always too much and never enough is something that is actually universal, and I wish I had known that when I was going through all of that crap. Because it wasn't until my book came out 2 years ago and I went on tour with the book that people were going up to me and they were like, this is my story. I'm like, no, this is my story. They're like, no, this is my story. So it is universal. So as I'm talking, start to think about the following things. How does the idea of being always too much and never enough resonate with you and for you? I even had a philanthropist recently come up to me and say it reminded her of like her charitable giving. Because it was like, lots and lots of money, but it wasn't enough because there's still animals suffering. There's still children suffering. There's still all these beings suffering. So it was like, that's how she interpreted it. This actually is a universal story. That's actually, by the way, total side note, like how I was able to write a memoir, which is a totally weird psychological experience, by the way, to like have all of your friggin' secrets in a book that like for some reason you actually chose to put out there. The reason that I can is because I don't think it is about me. I think it is about all of us. It's about all of our struggles to like find that like happy place, that sweet spot where we're no longer basing our judgment of ourselves on other people's perceptions of us. Anyway, I want to give you an idea of what I'm talking about by doing a little bit of a reading. I have a couple of readings to give you tonight. I hope that's okay. So this is taking you to when I was 17. Food, especially fast food, had not faded in its ability to comfort me as I stumbled through adolescence. If anything, I loved it more and more each year that passed. Double cheeseburgers were now the name of the game, providing me with the steadiness and the solace that I coveted. They were always there, always the same. Of course, there was a darker side to this relationship. Perhaps not surprisingly, the more of them I ate, the more of them I craved. They satisfied me until they didn't. They assuaged my angst until the absence of them added to that angst. Such is the definition of an addictive relationship. Not that I thought of it that way then, but I wasn't stupid. And I knew that I was somehow in the middle of a vicious cycle of eating crappy food and feeling crappy about my body. Still, my love was too strong to resist. By the time I got a car, an enchanting 1986 Toyota Camry that I called Henry, which only accelerated barely if you stepped full force on the gas pedal, there was no longer an obstacle between me and eating a second or sometimes third dinner. The fact that I was petrified of driving on highways was not a problem. Just down the road was a strip mall with everything I could ever need. A grocery store, a Chinese place, a pizza joint, a brand new shiny Taco Bell, and of course my first and still greatest love, Burger King. A tub of chocolate icing from Food Town was the perfect appetizer to a dinner of 2 cheeseburgers, extra large fries, and a vanilla milkshake. The blessed drive-through was like icing on the cake, or the pie, as it were, since the apple pie at Burger King was always an option to go with the shake. I would sit in the hidden part of my parking lot, blasting my Patti LuPone cassette, and eating my dinner at record speed. It was how I imagined heaven. I scoffed to myself when I thought of those kids who, like me, wanted a buzz that wasted their money and their brain cells on drugs when they could have this much better, cheaper, legal, and more functional high. Who needed marijuana when you could have the perfect orgasmic combination of fatty, sweet, and salty that made French fries with ketchup so succulent? While my teenage journals were full of incredibly tormented poetry that made Sylvia Plath sound like Dr. Seuss, what I really should have been doing was writing love sonnets to my cheeseburger. nestled behind the protective shield of Henry, whom I perhaps anthropomorphize a bit too readily, I finally felt genuine. I took a bite of my burger and I was myself. There was no other place in my life, not even in theater, not since the incident with the heckling, where I was safer, where I was calmer. I sipped my shake, and in my head, I had already escaped to New York City, where I knew I would live one day, though I wasn't entirely sure whether I wanted to be there so that I could achieve anonymity or fame. As I took a break from my burger and dug deeper into my tub of icing, my hopes and fears arm wrestled in my head, both certain they were destined to win. I will be incredibly famous. I will be amazingly fat. I will star on Broadway. I will be ugly. I will be rich. I will be a failure. I will be legendary. I will be forgotten. I will be loved. I will be loathed. I found that the faster I ate, the more rapidly my desires pushed my fears away, and the faster the image of Margaret and my other bullying classmates faded. So I picked up the pace and sprinted to the finish, licking my fingers to make sure no morsel would go undigested. I ate until I didn't remember that I was a reject, or at least until I didn't care. My stomach and heart swelled with satisfaction, and I felt full of life. The irony, of course, is that it was death I was full of, but I didn't see it that way for years. At the time, I was simply awaiting the cosmic high I received from the buttery bun, the smoky patty, the smooth shake that tingled as it slid down my throat into my soul and grounded me at my foundation. So it took a minute. I didn't even eat a vegetable until I was 30. I admit. When I was growing up, we ate those Weight Watchers meals that were they were the size of the palm of my hand. They were these little cardboard microwavable things. You know what I'm talking about? And you would put them in the microwave, it'd be lasagna or something, and then you would microwave it for 5 minutes, and then it was always burnt on the outside, but frozen in the very middle, no matter what. Anyway, that was what I thought was nourishment, and that was basically what I grew up with food. And from the time I was 8 until I was 30, I was what the world saw as the fat kid, and that to them meant I was less than. I mean, it was weird to go through that so early on and through my early adulthood of trying to be an actor but totally failing because there were never any roles for me. And 8 years ago, I actually wound up for the first time ever stopping the consumption of the food to basically just to escape myself, and I started to think about food differently. So I started to eat vegetables and do these juice fasts, but it wasn't coming from a place of losing weight. It was just coming from a place of trying to find this authentic self. I didn't even care anymore about losing weight, and I lost weight. And the world started treating me very, very differently at that point. And that was the hardest thing I've ever gone through. Because I expected that my view of the world would change if I lost 100 pounds. But what I didn't expect was how differently the world would treat me. So I wrote an article about it once, and I woke up the next morning. It was basically about how the world treated me differently as a thinner person than I had been. And I wrote an article, and I woke up the next morning, and it had gone totally viral, 100,000 Facebook shares in 24 hours. That's how I got my book deal, by the way. And it was really frustrating to me because everything I stand for is about bodily integrity and body positivity and body acceptance. And I started to realize that I had been othered for so long, and I had sort of arbitrarily jumped from this category of less than to this category of let's accept her, let's invite her to things, let's compliment her blazer, let's buy her a cup of coffee. And I'm looking at both of these experiences, and I was I'm still the same person. Why are you treating me differently? And all of this started to kind of mess with my activism in a way, because I didn't totally know where I fit anymore. I didn't trust people's, the way they were treating me, because I was wondering if they were treating me differently because I was thinner. Anyway, this is something that I also write about quite a bit in my book, and so I'm going to quickly read this part for you. And I'm also really curious when we do the Q&A, I want to further discuss this with you because I have some questions for you. The man next to me at the mailboxes in the lobby of my building smiled at me. I secretly held my breath, convinced I was about to get mugged. He lingered as I grabbed the eclectic mix of lamp catalogs, tax documents, and Chinese restaurant menus from inside my tin box. It took a minute to recognize him as my downstairs neighbor, a harmless-looking guy who had never said 3 words to me in the 5 years since I moved in. I used to try to strike up a conversation with him and with the other people who lived there, but to no avail, so I gave up trying, saving my energy for more important things like chewing. Admittedly, it had seemed odd to me to not offer the common universal courtesy of hi, or at least a head nod. After all, my neighbors and I knew extremely intimate details of each other's lives. I could smell what they were cooking for dinner. I could hear what they were arguing about on the phone. I could easily catch accidental glimpses of them in the hallway, unloading their groceries from their granny carts or unloading their problems onto their partners, and I'm sure they knew the same things about me. So why they never said hello and passed in the hallways always baffled me. And why I eventually took their lead and ignored them right back perhaps baffled me even more. But I got over it, figuring it was a New York City thing. Folks here were too cool for hellos, too busy for small talk. You came here to be famous, not affable. My neighbor was still standing there. I shut and locked the mailbox and then faced him, smiled just a tiny bit, lifted my eyebrows. I was guarded, but I was present. If you want to talk, talk. You look great, he started, shaking his head left to right, a tad maniacally. I mean, I hope it's okay for me to say that, but gosh, do I even know your name? I'm Christian. I let a second go by, realizing what was happening here. I'm Jasmin, I responded, still somewhat guarded, perhaps more so, actually. And thank you, I added, that's very nice. It's astonishing, I mean, wow. Christian was the one looking down now, acting somewhat embarrassed, one hand in his jeans pocket, the other one cupping the back of his neck. He was still shaking his head. How much weight did you lose, can I ask? I laughed nervously. My laugh was far away. I rubbed my thumb on the lamp catalog, wondering if they had any lampshades that weren't made of silk. Thank you, I said, ignoring his question. That's really nice of you. And on some level, it was. After that day, when he would see me, Christian would go out of his way to hold the front door when I was carrying too many groceries, to comment on the weather when we were again at the mailbox, and even every now and then to remind me that I looked great. My name is Thin, and I am the queen of this prom called life. You know, it took me finally getting accepted to realize that, like, being accepted didn't really matter to me anymore. And that was something that really became an important part of, like, both my animal rights activism and my LGBTQ activism. And it was like a long, long time coming. Because, you know, it was something that, like, I held on to throughout, like, all those years, like, with making that dreaded walk from the back of the classroom to the front. Like, it was 8 seconds. I always timed it was 8 seconds, where the kids would, like, hide their insults and their coughs. And I would, like, act nonplussed, but really it was killing me inside. And that became my identity. So that's partly why I ultimately went into activism. Because if I could do anything, it was to, like, speak up for those who, for whatever reason, we marginalized and we pushed aside. At first it was the LGBTQ community, and then it became animal rights. And of course, that's just the beginning, right? If we're going to speak about intersectionality. We're going to be speaking about a whole lot more groups than animals and queer people. Anyway, I didn't know how to get out of this judgment loop, and I started to realize that, like, I was also doing it. So that was super uncomfortable. Okay, let's get real. Like, the only way we can affect personal change and political change is to, like, sit in our discomfort, right? Like, what were those uncomfortable moments where you started questioning assumptions? Was it, like, questioning your internalized homophobia? Was it questioning your speciesism? Is that when you went vegan? Are you questioning it now? These are super uncomfortable moments, and I sit in uncomfortable moments every day. And And I hope I always do, until I'm done, until the day I die. I hope I'm always sort of uncomfortable at some point, because that's when change happens. And so it was at that moment that I started to realize that I was the bully too. Because we can't really change if we're just gonna sit around acting like we're the only ones who are oppressed, right? Because there's so many groups and so many organizations and so many communities that are really suffering. So what do we do with all that? I mean, this is another question, and that's what our hen house tries to get to the bottom of. Just constantly finding the tools to check ourselves and check each other. But we have to check ourselves. But we have to check each other. But we have to check ourselves. And part of checking ourselves means sitting in those uncomfortable moments. And that's when I realized that I was judging others and basically forming an opinion about what they were like by their appearance. They're so big. They're so small. They're so tall. It's just stop. I would tell myself stop. And I would ask myself to question whether I was feeling healthy or grounded that day. And if not, why not? So listen, as a tattooed vegan, lesbian, animal rights activist with a pretty strong obsession with my pit bull and a fairly loud habit of tap dancing across the stage, I know what it means to piss people off just by being me. But it's ironic, really, because what I want to stand for is compassion, for myself first, and then for all of those other communities, the ones who we so arbitrarily push aside, the ones we don't see, the ones we don't call beautiful. And for me, it took finally seeing myself as beautiful for me to realize that until and unless I get comfortable with the reflection in my mirror, I'm not going to be able to advocate for anybody else to the utmost of my ability. So if you're struggling with self-esteem and you're struggling with who you are, it's totally normal to do that. And I think that's when collective care comes in. So collective care is have you heard the term before? It was founded by Patrisse Cullors from Black Lives Matter. And it's collective care. It's making sure that we are taking care of our communities, making sure that we are finding and fostering safe spaces. And to me, collective care has to be woven in with self-care, which sometimes self-care can really be seen as a privilege issue. That's when collective care comes in. So finding the balance between collective care and self-care, I think, is of the utmost importance if we're going to really conquer all of these various different oppressions. Another thing that I think is really important is personal narrative. And so that's where I hope that my book comes in, and where the media making that I put out there also comes in, because I really think that the animal rights movement in particular has really not even begun to latch on to the importance of personal narrative as a means to create social change. So, one of the takeaways I would love for you to take away today is to find your truth and tell your story. Whether that's writing it down every night, whether that's getting a buddy who's your accountability partner who you get to write with, whether that's finding another creative expression, you have a story to tell in the same exact way as I have a story to tell. Because what's so extraordinary about my book is nothing. It's just a totally ordinary story. It's this snippet in time. It's this moment in my life that each of you has. This story, which by the way a lot has changed in the 2 years since it's come out, it's just this little moment in my life, just this talk is a little moment in your day. But what we have, and what gets us through all of this, is our stories, where we came from. I mean, it would be fascinating if we had a whole day, and we could each talk to each other and just actually ask questions, and then listen to people's answers, remember listening? That's also how we create social change, humility. So it's a mixture, I think, of self-care, collective care, personal narrative, and humility. If you think you know all the answers, you don't. I don't know anything. I mean, I have been interviewing people the entirety of my career. I have interviewed great famous people, and I've interviewed people who run stores in the smallest town in America, who are all creating change in their communities. And what I have learned is that I know nothing. What I have learned is that it's all about stopping and listening and allowing other people to have the space to tell their story. So where does our story come into this, and how does all of this work together? Well, hopefully you're following how it all kind of threads together, but like one thing that I think is super important as a way to advocate, let's talk about animals, advocate for animals specifically, is to not proselytize. I was given this piece of advice by my agent when we were writing the proposal for my book, which is like a horribly masochistic, part of writing a book that I wish on nobody. But anyway, he said, anytime you feel like you're proselytizing, take a step off of your soapbox and tell the story of how it was for you. So pay attention, okay, because this totally changed me. This changed everything for me. So, when I was 24 and I went vegan, I saw a documentary about factory farming. And I remember sitting in the theater, and I was a vegetarian already, so I thought I had like a leg up on everything. So I'm sitting there, and I'm watching the footage, and like my legs started shaking, because you've seen this footage, right? And I don't actually generally have shaky legs, so it was like kind of weird to like look. And at one point, I had so much frenetic energy that I like jutted out of my seat, and there's like a movie going on, so I sit back down, sorry, and I refocused on the screen. And what I saw in front of me were like families being broken apart. Like babies being ripped from their mothers, like never mind like the fathers, right? Like the semen extraction. It would be years before I thought about that. But what I saw in front of me were babies being torn from their mothers, and I thought of like my broken home as a kid. And my heart like hurt. And then that's when I learned about the dairy cows and egg-laying hens. And I was working in HIV awareness at the time, and I'm like sitting there like, why am I here? Like I just want to go have some frozen yogurt. And I saw these dairy cows and egg-laying hens being like absolutely exploited for their female parts. And I thought of my own experiences being exploited for my female parts. And I was like, shit. I can't do it anymore. And that's why I went vegan. And that's the story I tell. When people ask me why I went vegan, that's the story I tell. What I don't say is that I watched a movie and on this screen in front of me there were these animals in these cages that were so small that they couldn't turn around or extend their limbs or lie down comfortably. I don't tell that story because of the aforementioned power of personal narrative. Because when you're telling a story, when you're telling like your own story, which is really the story we should be telling, people kind of, their defenses go down and they're listening and they're with you and it's safer. And then, just like my book is universal and not extraordinary, your story is also universal. Somebody's going to find something in your story that's going to resonate with them and it's going to change them. Absolutely. If you're telling your story authentically, it's going to change them. You think you don't have a story to tell? Because you're 20? You have a story to tell. Every single person has a story to tell. And like that is what I'm like hoping that all of you do later. Is like find someone and be like, hey, okay, let's like humor her. Let's talk for like 20 minutes. I'll go for 10, you'll go for 10. Ask prompting questions, listen. And find humility. I mean, oh gosh, I wish everyone would do that. I wish I would do it more often, to be honest. Anyway, it's been a bit of a roundabout loop, like starting my career in LGBTQ stuff and then like circling back around to animal rights, and now like more and more. I actually just gave a talk like 2 weeks ago at the University of Montana on this exact same subject. Like more and more people are wanting this talk, are wanting these connections to be made, and I'd love to hear from you during the Q&A about like why that is. So anyway, the process of questioning assumptions, it's like this ever-evolving long process, and I remember starting this process when I was on the playground as a little kid. I was made fun of, but there were also other kids made fun of, and I would stand up for them, which didn't really do well for like me, But I kind of knew, like, oh, it's not really right to like arbitrarily say that this group is less than me, and like this group right here, this is more than me. So that to me is like the through line of all of this. And that to me is like where we need to start from, is to kind of break those divisions down a little bit. And I think we can do it, I think we can accomplish it. 20 years ago, I started to question those assumptions when I quit eating meat. So food, of course, is like the most personal political act there is, and I feel really good knowing that I finally came to that. I have another reading for you. Okay. So this is when I went vegetarian. So I was 19, and I was a theater student in Philadelphia at the University of the Arts. And this was the last time I ate meat. Looking back on it, though I didn't realize it at the time, the day I ate my last cheesesteak was the first time I gave any thought to where food actually came from. Coming right up Jazz, chirped the mustached man who made the cheesesteaks on my route to school. Though I saw this guy more consistently than I saw many other people in my life, and he'd actually cared enough to ask me my name, I never thought to ask him his in return. Our relationship was based solely on a sandwich. Thanks, I said, then proceeded to comment on the sunny weather, feeling that if I didn't say something, the only thing either of us would have focused on was the embarrassing regularity with which I consumed cheesesteaks. This was my second, just this afternoon. Walking away, a few minutes later, I held in my hand my $3 home-cooked meal. Why hadn't I known that food could taste this good? It wasn't even frozen in the middle. Frequently, with my cheesesteak in hand, I would walk back to my apartment and consume it in privacy, or at the very least, I would traipse over to Rittenhouse Square Park and eat it while sitting on a bench. But on days like today, when my appetite was ravenous and my energy frenetic, I would simply eat and walk, weaving in and out of foot traffic as effortlessly as I avoided the searing reality that each of my sandwiches held inside the bun an individual. Several individuals, more likely. Like most people, I pushed that thought out of my head entirely, choosing to ignore the painful truth behind the meat I ate. But on this day, for some reason, reality intruded. I thought of Emily and her quiet boycott. I didn't even know the driving force behind her vegetarianism, whether it was based in health concerns, animal welfare, or environmentalism, but something about her decision to forego flesh spoke to me in a way that suddenly I could not ignore. With my sandwich in my hand and these thoughts occupying my brain space, I furiously walked across Broad Street, nearly tripping over my feet more than once. I suddenly realized I was right in front of my school's main building, and the cascade of stone stairs leading up to the entrance called to my tired body, so I parked myself and my meal there. I had only taken a few bites out of my cheesesteak by then, and I was simply holding it, tightly grasped in my hand, like a piece of evidence that shocked the jury. Was I on the witness stand? Yes, Your Honor. I watched as this individual's flesh was chopped up and cooked by a person who then served it to me with a soda. An unfamiliar feeling washed over me like a wave, giving me a vague sense of car sickness. I stared at my sandwich and resisted the urge to go in for the kill. That is, to take another bite. Suddenly, I realized what I was feeling, and the magnitude of it made me shudder. It was completely foreign to me, yet as soon as I realized what it was, there was no doubt. It was the feeling of losing my appetite. We have to, work to dismantle this system in order to rebuild it. And I know it is an imperfect one. And I think you'll probably be bringing up the imperfect parts of it later, because you are like a smart group who is, thinking these issues through clearly, or you wouldn't be hosting the types of events you're hosting. And I hope that you are considering the flaws in kind of the mainstream vegan movement. But if we're not questioning assumptions and having these dialogues and telling our stories and practicing collective care, practicing self-care, then nothing's going to ever change, and marginalized groups will continue to suffer. So I myself have been very guilty of second-guessing whether something I have experienced has been abuse or sexism or sexual harassment, partly because I was afraid. And I was indoctrinated into this culture where women and queer people are secondary at best. Not to mention all of the various other marginalized communities. So we need to rebuild this system that has been harmful to the animal rights movement, to all the various types of institutions that you're in now, right? And part of that needs to be finding and fostering these safe spaces where we feel heard and seen. There's this other part of my book that I just wanted to mention because I feel like it's very relevant to college in particular. And I get really excited when I talk at colleges. So think part of my story for how I like started to kind of come into my body, it was like the process of getting tattoos. Because, who has a tattoo? Yeah, you do. What's your tattoo?
It's an eye right here.
Oh, that's nice.
Thank you.
That's really
I
nice.
have the same tattoo on my ankle.
You have like an eye in your arm and your ankle. Do you ever like line them up?
I can't.
No, maybe some yoga. That's cool. So I mean, I don't know. How old are you? Is that private?
I'm 19.
Okay, I was like your age when I got my first tattoo. I was 18, my 18th birthday. And, you know, it was like this process of reclaiming my body. Because it was like, no, my body is not yours. My body is mine. Here, I'm going to do what I want to it. Look, I'm going to get tattoos. Anyway, I'm certainly not saying that everyone should leave here and go get a tattoo, but you know what? Why not? We could get like a group discount. We'll all get an eye. Or like I don't know, like a leaf, like a kale stem or something. We have to decide on something together. We'll take a survey after this is done. So like the process of like using my body as like basically this canvas was fascinating to me. And it was something that started on my 18th birthday. So I was in Philadelphia, as I mentioned. I lived in Philadelphia for like a year and a half, and then I moved to New York City, where then I lived for 20 years, until I moved to California last year. Anyway, so it was like in Philadelphia, and on my 18th birthday, I took myself out for a Slurpee. Party kid. And so I'm standing there like on South Street, right? Like drinking my Slurpee. Is anyone like from Philly? You are? Oh yes, okay. I only lived there for a year and a half, but like there's a lot of pride that comes with being in Philly. Anyway, so I was like drinking my Slurpee, and across the street there was this pop-up psychic stand. And it said like, psychic reading, $20. And I'm sitting there slurping my Slurpee, and of course the woman, whose name is Tilly, obviously, she like sees me, and I'm like looking around, and she's like, huh. I'm like, okay. So I go over, and you know, it's my birthday, and I'm drinking my Slurpee, so I was like, all right, okay, I get a psychic reading. Anyway, so like, I was skeptical, but I was intrigued, and she gave me a psychic reading. It was like, she saw into my soul. Like, she knew everything about what I was thinking and feeling, my history and my future and everything. I was so moved that I went back and I took my my best friend to see her 2 weeks later for her birthday. And I sat with her. I was so excited. And Tilly proceeded to give my friend the exact same reading as she gave me, verbatim. Tilly was a fake. But before I realized that Tilly was a fake, she gave me a piece of advice that had seeped in. And that was to be bold. So before I realized that Tilly was a fake, I left her little pop-up stand, and I made my first bold move as an adult, and I got a tattoo. I decided on a nickel-sized black star on my right shoulder blade. Why a star? Asked the burly, unshaven, 40-year-old tattoo artist wearing a ratty Nirvana t-shirt. My meeting with Tilly was making me feel a new sense of courage, and so I boldly said, because I'm going to be one. I closed my eyes just after those words escaped my mouth because I was sure that the tattoo artist was going to laugh at my proclamation, just a smidge, just enough to make sure that I wouldn't notice, except I would have. So I closed my eyes instead and disappeared into my world of aspiring stardom and newfound adulthood. Let him laugh. Eventually, I was sure the joke would be on him and not everyone else who had ever decided I was less than because I was fat or foolish. Getting a tattoo wasn't something I'd ever seriously considered before that night because I was sure that it would have conflicted with my acting career. But a small black tattoo was, I figured, easily coverable. In high school, one of my classmates had a tattoo, and I remember being horrified by it. I went home and said to my mother, how could she make a decision like that which will last the rest of her life? But I fixated on her tattoo unendingly, shocked by its permanence, intrigued by its confidence. When I was growing up in Edison, New Jersey, the only thing I considered permanent was my desire to get the hell out. As soon as the needle hit my skin, and I felt a sensation that was very much reminiscent of a cat scratch, I knew there was no going back. It's like that moment when you go in for a kiss with your beloved and attractive friend, crossing that line for good. There are no backseats allowed. Same with the tattoo. Much like my tattooed high school comrade, the permanence of the ink would forever memorialize this moment in my life, and it would grow and evolve as I did. "You're done," said the Nirvana guy. "That's it?" I asked, deciding then and there that I would be different now. "That's it," he responded, handing me a mirror and holding up another one so that I could see the tattoo. There it was, a tiny black spot of proof that I belonged to myself. "Wow," was all I could muster. A moment later, the tattooist looked me in the eyes for the first time, and I noticed with a tenderness that surprised me that his were a deep royal blue. He smiled at me in a way you'd imagine a father would smile at his child on the first day of kindergarten or the last day of high school, and he said, "I hope you do become a star." Maybe the world wasn't quite as mean as I had always assumed. "Thanks," I offered, then let a beat go by. Before I left, I quickly added, "My tattoo is fabulous, but I think it's my last one. If I'm going to be an actress, I can't exactly be full of tattoos." The Nirvana guy half smiled. "Oh, you'll be back," he said. I rolled my eyes at him, or with him. Somehow I knew he was right. He was right. So anyway, look, I can't tell you how this ends. This book, it's like I said, it's just this tiny part of my story, and this day it's this tiny part of your story, and I do hope that you'll find your truth and tell your story, because nothing's gonna change if you don't. Nothing. I mean, that's actually the through line of Our Hen House. Like, that every single person I have interviewed, they have taken it upon themselves to create change. I hope that we can continue to evolve like that, to know better and to do better and to ask questions and to take care of each other and to really focus on confronting those isms that we have ourselves. If you're here, you've probably at least started to question the speciesism one. What haven't you confronted? How will you find out? You'll find out by asking people to tell you their stories. You'll find out by being uncomfortable, because it's the only way things are going to change. I was very lucky, because kind of the through line for me in this world where I was bullied, where I had this very beautiful vain mom who was really upset that I didn't look like this quintessential American beauty. I had my grandmother. My book is dedicated to her. She passed away a few years ago. And the end of her life, she also jumped the fence. But she jumped the fence in the opposite direction, because she had this brain tumor that stopped her limbs from working. So she was in a wheelchair suddenly. And I would walk her in the mall or whatever, and people would stop looking at her. They would address me instead of her. And she would look at them and she would answer for herself. Because, she answered to herself. And I think of her often, and I think of how she saw me no matter what. She always saw me. She didn't care what I looked like. If we're lucky, we had someone like that. We had someone who believed in us. We have someone who believes in us now. And I think it's okay, despite the fact that we don't want to let other people's perceptions define who we are. I think it's okay to latch on to some of those supportive people and be oh, they're my people. They believe in me. That can be part of my truth. All these people who want to push me down, and you know who they are. Let them go. Let them go the toxic crap that you should let go of in your life. The relationships, the foods that don't fuel you, the people that don't fuel you, the classes that don't fuel you, the majors that don't fuel you, the worldviews that don't fuel you. Let them go. Start to make room for what's good and what's nourishing, and then we can show up as our most grounded selves. And if we do that, I honestly believe that we can unlock a much, much better world. So, I would love to do a Q&A with you. I would love to hear your stories a little bit. I want it to be a two-way Q&A. I have questions too, so would that be okay? Okay, so, let's talk. It's always scary to go first. I wrote a memoir. You could ask a question. Okay.
I have a lot of voice. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. So, I really like the emphasis that you placed on the idea of time spent in conversations about veganism on our own personal narratives. Because yeah, people oftentimes ask me personally, why are you vegan? And the answer I give is the answer that you said maybe we shouldn't be giving, which is, I'll talk about the facts sometimes. I'm curious for you, how do you transition? So if you start with the personal narrative, and then they say, oh, okay, oftentimes what people do is they'll start asking me a bunch of questions too. Like health concerns, and they'll ask, they'll say they might know someone who's vegan. So my question is, once you've said the personal narrative, what are some ways you'd like to take the conversation from there?
I'm glad that you asked that, because I definitely think we need to be talking about the facts. I don't think it should only be personal narrative. I just think it depends on who we're talking to, like how they're coming to us, like if they're actually just instigating, if they already have their opinions. And the thing is, like, we can start with the facts and we should know our stuff. Don't worry about if you don't know everything, but at a certain point, especially when people start to challenge you, this kind of eating really works for me. That's what you say, nobody's gonna fight you. And then I'm like, yeah, but like, what about, like people who can't be vegan? You could actually answer that. I mean, that's like a valid question, it's a valid answer. But I think it's a mix. I mean, I think like as vegans, or people who advocate for veganism, we need to like actually become like psychologically astute. And that's kind of communication 101, right? Like, who are we talking to, and how are we going to meet them in a way that they can hear us? So I have found, I used to be the campaigns manager for Farm Sanctuary. Like, I have a long history of like campaigning and getting information out there. But I have found that like coming at it from not just a brochure perspective is the difference between someone who's gonna like blankly nod and someone who's gonna really think about it. But yeah, I'm really glad that you brought that up. Thank you. Yeah.
Sometimes kind of naively, but it seems like there's kind of two different vegan movements in terms of the health and then animal rights. And I think your talk kind of reconciled that in a good way, but how do we, like as a movement, what's the best way to approach that kind of concern? What's the best way to like emphasize that there is this kind of unity of purposes?
And that was really well said. I think it depends on a variety of circumstances. I could give you my opinion, but you might be coming at it from a different perspective because you might be very health inclined. You might be like a health major, in which case you would have a different perspective than me. You would have like a different set of tools to bring to the conversation than me. But like, I personally think that a lot of people do go vegan, especially these days, for health reasons and then learn about the ethics. So my Lyft driver, who obviously should represent everyone in the world, he was like, what are you doing here in Chicago? And I told him, and he was like, I'm this close to being vegan. I saw What the Health. Like everyone saw What the Health, right? Like What the Health is making everyone go vegan. And I'm like, cool, like the more people who are gonna stop eating animals, the fewer animals are going to be eaten. I do not believe that everyone who goes vegan for health reasons is going to stay vegan. So I think that's like when we kind of jump on with like talking about not only the health issues, but also the ethics. But yeah, I think that you're right. I think that there is like this health vegan movement and this like other broader vegan movement. And I guess if like you're coming from a perspective of like social justice, then speak from that perspective while bringing up the health benefits when appropriate, because people don't want to confront their moral inconsistencies. They're more interested in how to have, like my Lyft driver, how to have optimal performance at the gym. So, I will say, well, like there's this great new documentary called Game Changers, and I'm currently editing a story about all these Olympians who are vegan, and it's like optimal performance. And it's just kind of like when I learned about what was happening to animals, there was no way I could support that. That is where your question comes in, by the way. Like that's where it's like, okay, we're talking about health, and like, bam, I could not support that industry. You know what? you know, well, Peter Singer, right? Like, who's no relation to me, though I like to call him Dad. Anyway, he's been on our hen house several times, and it's actually true that the way that Peter Singer stopped eating animals was like he was having dinner with a friend of his. This is like, by the way, if you don't know, the kind of like the grandfather of the animal rights movement, like this philosopher who wrote, you know, like he's just this, like, he was one of Time Magazine's top 100 people of like the last century, and he basically founded our modern day animal rights movement in a lot of ways. But anyway, so he was having dinner with someone, he was eating meat, and the other person wasn't. And he said, you don't have meat on your plate, why? And the person sitting across from him said, I don't like the way animals are treated. That's it. And then Peter Singer happened. I mean, that was it. So like, it's kind of a blend between your two questions, but does anyone else have any thoughts on that? On health, on the health kind of movement and the ethics? How to bridge the two? I'd love your perspective. Okay. Oh, right here.
So I kind of have a perspective in terms of, it kind of goes with what you were saying about collective care. So I teach in a Head Start program, and I have kids there whose parents are vegan, but because they get, you know, free meals from school, they'll say like, oh, I would like my child to have the same diet at school that they have at home, and we cannot provide that. Mm-hmm. Because what it ends up doing is being food that is usually cooked not that great. Mm-hmm. It might be vegan, but you don't want to eat it. And so, you know, if you only serve kids that, they would go hungry. So I guess I would have a question, like, where do you see like the intersectionality of being low income and vegan, and also having to rely, like not being, you know, low income, but oh, we have community gardens, these nice things, but like relying on like state-sponsored programs, especially when you have like many low-income students who they're getting their meals from school. That's all they've got, and they can't make these good choices because it's just not an option.
Totally. It's a really good question, and it's a really big issue. And there are like more and more organizations that are directly confronting it. So, you know, PCRM, it's like the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. It's like a big, huge focus of theirs is to like switch the school lunch programs. But obviously that's not happening everywhere yet. The LAUSD now has a vegan school lunch option that is mandated, and there are more and more people who are making those things happen. But I think that there are much more complex issues at hand. I think it's a multi-pronged approach. I don't think it's one thing. I think PCRM is one thing. I think that really confronting the issues within food deserts is another thing. And it brings up a lot of food justice issues. Dr. Milton Mills, who would be a great speaker for you here, he talks a lot about dietary racism and how to confront that, which is also like one of the issues at hand there. And then there's like just education within various types of communities and like working within the communities themselves. So there's more and more activists who are doing that kind of work, and also education regarding how actually a vegan diet can be like the most affordable diet. You know, there's a bunch of books out there for like how to eat vegan on $1 a day or $4 a day. I don't know why there's a $1 book and a $4 book. Apparently $2 and $3, you're not really, you can't do it, nope. But anyway, but that is also an issue of like, its own issue of privilege. And like one of my favorite organizations is the Food Empowerment Project and A Well-Fed World. So those two organizations are confronting food justice issues on a systemic level, and they're dealing directly with the issues that you're talking about. So again, it's the Food Empowerment Project and A Well-Fed World. They have a lot more resources than I can give you right now at this moment, but both of them have been on our hen house, and they are doing work. I actually just interviewed, it was a couple weeks ago, I don't know if anyone heard it, but I interviewed Joni Marie Newman, and she has like 10 cookbooks out, and at the end of the interview I said, so like what, now that you have 10 cookbooks out, what would you do differently? Like, is there anything that you look back in your career and you're like, oh, I missed that big issue? She talked about food justice, and she talked about like how she herself lives in a food desert, And she is currently working on a guide to eating vegan if where you buy your groceries is the liquor store. So I think that there's, I think that it is a very big issue, absolutely. I think it's an issue that involves a lot of race issues. I think it involves like a lot of education issues, and I feel really hopeful that this is like being confronted by community members way more than it was 5 years ago. Yeah, it's a really big one though. Mm-hmm.
So I think you've just started getting at this a bit, but I know that with a lot of social justice-oriented issues, the emphasis tends to be on making institutional change or addressing things on a systemic level, whereas in the animal welfare movement, it seems like the emphasis is still on trying to affect individual behavior change.
I can hear you.
Okay, yeah, and getting people to change what they eat. So I'm just curious what you think the balance should be between trying to get people to change their own individual behavior in terms of what they eat versus trying to advocate for institutional change. And also, if you think that perhaps this emphasis on individual diet change could make some people feel as though by eating a certain way they're doing enough, when really they could be having more of an impact by doing other things.
The answer is yes. Yes. I think we need a multi-pronged approach. I think it would be foolish for us to say that this strategy works and this strategy doesn't, so let's only do that strategy and not that strategy. Because, we don't have that much more time. From an environmental perspective, like animal rights aside, like our environment is screwed unless we make big change, and I think we need all of it. So, like, to answer your question, I think that we need to be, so let me back up. Our hen house was partly created because I used to work for Farm Sanctuary, and because I was kind of tired of people waiting to act until like a top-down organizational campaign said, do something, sign this petition, go to this fundraiser. And I strongly believe that people should be signing that petition and going to that fundraiser. However, like the amount of people who I felt were like kind of waiting for that to happen was frustrating to me. So our hen house started because we wanted to be, as we call it, a place to find our way to change the world for animals. So I think that we definitely need systemic, big, gigantic institutional change. Absolutely. And I think we need people to be advocating on a more person-to-person basis, too. And that doesn't need to have anything to do with top-down organizational campaigns. It could just be what you're doing right now today here. It could be like advocating within your community. I think we need humane education. I think we need media. I think we need changes in the law. I think we need the arts. And so I guess my answer to you is like sort of a non-answer, which is that like we need to have it all. I don't know if I know the balance. I think the balance depends on like what you want to do, like how you want to affect change in your activist career. Like is it joining, the staff of Mercy for Animals? Is it doing undercover investigations? Is it becoming a humane educator? I can't say what's right or not. It depends on your talent and your skills and your interests and your resources. But to your second point, I think that, to your second point about is it like enough for people to go vegan? If people go vegan, it's fucking fantastic. And is it enough? Like for me, no. When, like the second I went vegan, I became a professional activist. Like I just was like, I hit the ground running. I like through my acting career, which was like totally unsuccessful, by the wayside. And I was like, now I'm gonna advocate for animals as my life's mission. I think that a lot of people who go vegan just wind up doing that by nature. But if someone wants to be a quiet vegan, then what they're doing is they're quietly boycotting. And boycotting is a very important form of activism. So I think that it's great. If we can make it more and more people go vegan, I think that's great. Sort of kind of answered your question, but not really. But we'll just say I did. But I mean, if anyone else wants to answer that. You all bring up really good points, by the way. Well, I'd love to hear from someone about like how you went vegan. I'm not gonna point at you if I want to. Does anyone want to volunteer that information? I'll give you a free book.
For the free book, definitely I'll offer up why I went vegan. So I'm 21 now. I went vegan when I was 18 during my senior year in high school. And how'd the story go? So I'd been pescatarian for about a few months before. I'm pretty sure everyone here probably knows, but for those who don't, a pescatarian is one who is, you will eat fish, you won't eat fish, and then basically everything else that most people eat, you'll be fine eating. No, I'm sorry. You only eat.
Yeah, no, we thought we're with you.
Anyway, but then I watched some documentaries, I read some articles online, and then I had essentially just went vegan after that. I saw a very famous speech by an activist named Gary Yourofsky online, so that kind of helped as well. I had done a philosophy program the previous summer, and some of the instructors there were vegan, and so they had kind of given me some of the arguments in favor of veganism. In fact, one of the ones, I think that's due to Peter Singer. And yeah, so that's pretty much how it happened for me.
How has it changed you?
I think I'd like to think at least that it's made me a little bit more cognizant of social justice issues in general. So for me personally, being like cis, straight, white male, like a lot of these things, a lot of my own privileges, I think were invisible to me for a while. And I think one thing veganism helped me do was see that there are kind of large-scale biases in society. And then once I saw kind of the nonsensicality of a lot of the anti-vegan arguments, then I started to see the nonsensicality of a lot of other hierarchical structures in society, like rapidly. And so I think that's one way in which it's changed me.
Thank you so much. That's great. You get a free book. What's your name?
Oh, Henry.
Henry. Oh, you're Henry! Hi, Henry. Yeah, nice to meet you. What was I gonna say? Yeah, I mean, okay, I know what I was gonna say. I'm not gonna out anyone, but like, has anyone ever been in like a situation where you're like, so when did you come out? So when did you come out? Like people are sitting around the table like, when did you come out? This is like exactly the same thing. I just wanted you to know that it's really funny because like lots of queer people sit around saying like, when did you come out? How was that for your family? How was that for you? When did you know? Like how has it changed you? And it's like the coming out as vegan story. Anyone else want to tell their story? You don't get a free book, I'm a writer. Or ask a question or anything that's batting around in your head. Okay, well I'm not gonna, pull it out of you, but I do want to say that I'm really appreciative that you're having these conversations. And I really hope that this is just the beginning for you of having these discussions with each other. And you can always reach me. I can give you my business card or you could just email me, find me online. I'm gonna be selling my book at $16 except for Henry. I accept any kind of payment. I have a credit card thingy, I take cash. If you can't afford $16, then tell me and we'll figure something out. I do have an audiobook if you're more into audiobooks. I can't sign that, but I did narrate it. And I'm very grateful to you for having me out here today, so thank you so much. Oh, and take VegNews. I brought them. Take them. For free. 2 for Henry.